The 2015 Les Paul Junior sucks, and here's why. Last year, I walked into my local music store and they had a 2015 Les Paul Junior that came with a hard shell case for $650 Canadian. So, understandably, I jumped on it without thinking twice. After a full year of using it for both YouTube videos and for professional recordings, as well as everyday use, I think I'm in a pretty good position to do a review to let you know what I think about it. I'm going to be talking about the pros and cons of the 2015 models, and I am going to upgrade this guitar, and I'm going to share with you what those upgrades are. So make sure to stay until the end if you want to know what I'm going to be upgrading this guitar with. Now let's get to the content. We're going to start with the pros. The very first thing I liked on this guitar is the neck. This is going to be one of those points where people do not agree. Gibson decided to make a really weird choice by making the fretboard just a bit wider, so you have a bit of wiggle room for both E strings on each side, which is a bit strange because it almost looks like you could fit extra strings there. Gibson's reason for doing this was apparently to give us a little more wiggle room for vibratos and bending, and it does work. It felt strange for about 20 minutes, but I got used to it really quickly. And when I swap between guitars, this doesn't become an issue. I'm just used to that guitar feeling that way. Either you're gonna like it or you won't. But personally, I really like the neck on the 2015 model. I really like the look of this guitar as well. When I walked into that store, I really liked the stunning look of the cherry red. I've always liked that on Les Paul Specials and Juniors. And on top of that, this guitar has a 4-piece body. And the 4 pieces are not even book matched. I have one strip in there that's really dark in contrast to the rest of the other woods. And I thought that gave it a really unique look, and I really like the figuring of the wood as well. So whenever I'm doing videos and I got the lights and the camera up, you can tell that it's a little more obvious than with the naked eye. So that's another thing I really liked about it. It has that classic look, and it had that little uniqueness in the choice of wood for this particular instrument. The other thing I really enjoy about this guitar is the sound of it. Acoustically, it's got a lot of resonance and it sustains for a very long time. Now, those are all great criterias for liking a guitar. I like the neck, I like the looks, and it sounds good acoustically. So it sustains really well and it's got great resonance. There's no dead spots anywhere. But why do I say it sucks? Well, let's go cover that. The very first thing I hated on this guitar was the volume pot and the tone pot. When I bought it, I had no clue what was in there, and I just assumed it was going to be quality. I've had Gibsons before, and the volume pot and tone pot were always good quality, but this one isn't. I opened it up, had a look inside, and they are Gibson branded volume and tone, but they're part of this PC board little quick connect setup. I don't have a problem with PC boards. That's not the issue for me. The issue for me is the actual potentiometers themselves. They sound like garbage. They do not operate the way I would like them to operate. So if you use the volume pot and you turn it down just a bit, the range between full on at 10 and around 7 is about the only wiggle room you have, really. Anything below 7 just drops off a cliff so fast, it makes it unusable. And the tone pot is the same. Now, between 10 and 7 is about all the wiggle room you have. Anything from 7 on down to 0 is just super dark, and when you end up at 0, you get this massive boost in the low mids, and you get this really honky, almost like wah kind of sound. It's not a bad thing. It's just not how I would like the tone pot to be. And the other downside to this particular setup is that, let's say you wanted to change the pickup on your guitar. You need that little quick connect adapter, which I do not have. It can be bought for fairly inexpensive online. It's just another step to upgrade your guitar if you don't like the pickups. And I don't like that. I like the old method of just soldering the thing on myself. I don't think they're that usable, especially not if you use them a lot. If you don't use them at all, this might not be an issue for you, but I'm always rolling back on either of those things, and sometimes both at the same time. And if you do this with this guitar, it sounds like garbage. 2015 was a really strange year for Gibson, and the pickup on this guitar is no exception. The P90 that's in there is based off the 1946 AlNiCo slug pickup that you could find on the ES125 models, and I presume that the voicing of that particular pickup was made for those types of guitars. On a solid body guitar like the Les Paul Junior, it sounds really thin, doesn't have a whole lot of bass, and it's very bright sounding. It almost sounds like a Fender Telecaster bridge pickup, but I already own a Fender Telecaster and I wanted an authentic P90 sound, so I'm going to be swapping out that pickup. Now we're going to be talking about the elephant in the room, which is the G-Farce tuners that came stock with every Gibson's in 2015. When I went at the music store and tried out the guitar, I did notice the G-Farce at the back of the headstock. That wasn't a big issue for me. I knew how people felt about it, but I figured, you know, what the hell? I'm gonna figure this out. I read the manual, I looked at a bunch of videos on YouTube, and I figured, I got this. You know, I have a home studio, I do YouTube videos, and if the guitar can tune itself better than I can, why not? Now, that was in theory, but in practice, it was very different. So here's my experience with the G-Farce tuner so far. Keep in mind my Les Paul Junior has a fixed bridge, so I can't do the intonation on it. That's the first thing that the G-Farce has a hard time with. This is not perfectly intonated, so tuning up, the thing is always second guessing itself because it can never land precisely where it's supposed to be. The second thing is that there's that tilt on the headstock for Gibsons, which makes the G string almost impossible to get perfect, and sometimes even the low E string. This is not my first Gibson, I've owned many of them, and they all suffer from the exact same problem. So now you got that headstock tilt, which is causing some issues with the tuning, and you got the fixed bridge, which you can't do the intonation on, which pretty much renders the whole G-Farce tuner into a paperweight. For example, I do not strum the whole guitar and let the G-Farce tune every single string at once. I go one string at a time so it can be more precise. Now, I did follow the guide and that's what they suggested, so that's what I did. But here's the thing, you start with the first string, it tunes up. Second string tunes up. You get to the third one, it'll wind up, and then it's gonna wind down. And then it's gonna wind up again. And then it looks like it's locked in, so you move on to the fourth. And then you move on to the fifth. And that's usually where it starts to wind down again. You're like, why is the third string moving again? I thought you were locked in. It's gonna wind down, it's gonna wind up. And then it looks like it's okay. You're like, are you okay now? And R2-D2's doing its thing, like, you're like, okay, fine. And then you go on to the E string and it starts moving again. What the hell are you doing? Just lock in. And then it flashes and that's a sign that the guitar's tuned. And you strum it, and sure enough, the G string's out of tune. If I wasn't so pig-headed about using the tuners and learning how to use them, I would just wind that string by hand. But no, I go through the whole motion again. Now, all the strings are doing these little random things. And the more you're draining the battery, the more of a shit show you're gonna end up with the stupid tuners. They're just gonna randomly just tune up or tune down, and then you're gonna listen to it, it's gonna be completely out of tune. So you're probably thinking, hey dummy, why are you still persisting on using them? Just tune it by hand. Yeah, let's talk about that. Now, the tuners are 40-to-1 ratio. Put that in perspective, most good tuners on guitars are usually anywhere between 14-to-1 and 18-to-1 ratio. These are 40-to-1, so that's 40 turns for a full revolution of the peg. That's a lot of twists and turns, and you can't use those little tuner thingamajiggies. I'm going to put a picture, I forget what they're called, and you can't put those on because you're just going to break the tuner peg itself. So you got to wind it by hand. But if you want to tune the whole thing by hand, that's what you got to do. So if you're putting a fresh new set of strings, you try to twist this thing and tune it up with a 40-to-1 ratio for every single string. It just doesn't end. So my experience so far with the tuners is that they're not reliable. They don't work as well as they should. I have popped some strings because the tuner just kept tuning up for some reason and would just pop my string and that would be that. And then I'd be like, why? Fresh new strings. Why did you keep tuning up, RoboCop? Why did you keep going and going and going? How did you not know you weren't landing on the note? I don't know if it's just mine. Some people have been very lucky to use them without any issues whatsoever, but I am done with the G-Farce. I've tried them. I tried being impartial and it doesn't work. So they're coming off. I'm going to be putting on some locking tuners by Hipshot. So let's go look at what parts I'm going to be upgrading and what the cost was. The first upgrade I'm going to do to my guitar is change the tuners to Hipshot 6GLO. Those are open back locking tuners that come with brackets to fit on the back side of the headstock, and you don't even have to mount the tuners into the wood. You just put them in those brackets and they're going to fit in there nice and tight without having to mod the back of the headstock. So if ever I decide to sell the Gibson in the future, I'm not going to have to screw anything into the wood. All I got to do is just take those tuners out and put the G-Farce back in, and I'm good to go. Now, in terms of volume pot and tone pots, I decided to go with the Emerson Custom pre-wired kit for Les Paul Juniors. It's wired to the 50 specs. It looks really good, much neater job than I could do myself. So I figured it's a little more money, but if I'm getting quality components, I might as well get that if I'm going to make this into a guitar that I actually love to play and that I love the sound of. So I decided to go with that kit. If you're interested in seeing what I think about it, you can click right here in the cards. Now let's go look at my pickup choice. In terms of pickup choice, I went with a local builder. The company is called the Pickup Wizard. Leonard is world famous for his Jazzmaster pickups, but I do have a set of his 1955 64 Tele pickups in my Telecaster, and I love them. So I contacted him. I asked him if he had any P90s. He said, I do not, but I can custom make one for you. So my specifications were pretty simple. I just wanted an old style pickup. I wanted around 8.5K with some AlNiCo 2 magnets, and that's what he built. So I'm just waiting to put it in my guitar. But first, what I want to do is do a shootout comparison between the stock pickup in the Gibson versus the one that Peter built. If you want to hear that, you can click right over here in the cards. Now, if you're interested in any of the videos in this series, I'm going to be posting them in the description box below, whether it's the tuners, the pots, or the pickup upgrade. That's where you're going to find them. And if you look in the comments section at the top, I'm going to be pinning some playlist series that you might be interested in if you enjoyed this video. Now, I'm going to go do those upgrades. I'm going to film those videos, and I'm going to be putting them online, and I'm going to see you in the next video. Cheers.